Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and homemaker. Come along with me as I share my love for simple living, growing in my allotment garden, diving into what it means to be an urban homesteader and embracing life as a mother and homemaker. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Slow Living Collective podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here today in today's episode. So today I am going to be talking to Alex. She is joining me and we are going to be talking all about our allotments, about gardening and about our mental health and how gardening is just so incredible for your mental health and just for your soul. It really, really is. So whether you are a seasoned gardener, new to gardening, or maybe just looking for something extra to do that, maybe help support your mental health, then be sure to check out the rest of this episode. So let's dive into it. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast episode. Before we dive in, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, of course. Or thank you for having me, first of all. It's very nice to be a part of a podcast that I listen to. It's like I feel kind of like a bit of stardom going on here. But yeah, so I'm Alex. I am an illustrator. I live in Buckinghamshire in a little cottage, and I absolutely love gardening, art. If you go to my Instagram, it's just that's all I ever talk about. If you're not into art or gardening, yeah, don't bother following me. You'll be really bored. And I also work a bit in marketing and PR as well. So kind of, straddle a couple of things. Always like to be busy. And I have a 2-year-old as well. So if life wasn't busy enough, but it's all lovely things. So
excellent. So today we're going to talk about all things gardening, and I'm really excited because I love nothing more than talking about gardening. But we're also going to talk about mental health and sort of like why gardening can be such an incredible tool for managing our mental health. So firstly, do you want to share what your growing space is like?
yeah, so we've got a couple of growing spaces, I suppose. So at home we have a small courtyard garden. So it's all paving. So everything's in containers. And we've been here. I think this is our 5th year. And so yeah, like I say, everything's in containers in different versions. We've got a lot of vertical things happen. Everything is of varying heights. Like you have to kind of watch your head as you're moving around. It's all kind of around surrounding you. But I actually really like it. It's like a little jungle, and especially for Amelia being a small 2-year-old, it must be pretty fun. Just kind of like go, even though it's a small space, it's kind of got a bit of a wild feel to it, obviously intentional. But and then just up the road, we're really lucky to have our allotment. So we've had that for a couple of years. So it was literally, we were on the waiting list just before lockdown, before allotments became really, really trendy. So we were lucky that we were top of the list when one became available. I think after us there were like 100 people or something.
Oh, wow.
So we were really lucky. So only a 2-minute walk, and we're surrounded by countryside, lots of fields as well. So really, really fortunate that even though we only have kind of like a small outside space at home, as soon as we kind of step out, we have that option of getting more greenery. So for me, it's not really an issue having a small space at home, and it means that we can kind of dedicate the courtyard to more, just like I say, a bit of a wild, like naturey look, and just do what we want with it. And then the allotment's a bit more about growing things, and also trying to create a space for Amelia to get really excited about gardening and growing when she's not completely trampling over all the beds. So we've got a nice mix. And at the allotment, like I say, it's our 2nd year. We didn't do so well last year because of I'm going to blame the dry weather, but it was also because of the juggle of having like Amelia was only just walking, she's falling over everywhere. It was all just a bit kind of haphazard, so it didn't make it up as much. But this year we're going for it. So vegetables and hopefully some nice cut flowers as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So we have a small space as well. Like we have a balcony, and this is really the first year. Well, actually, I was going to say this is really the first year that I've not really done much on the balcony, but I'm clearly lying because I said this year I'm not going to do so much on the balcony. I'm going to leave it all for the allotment, and then slowly I keep bringing things home. Like I bought two big pots of tomatoes home because I was like, they're not doing so well here, so I'm going to bring them home. I've just bought some basil home. I've bought some more herbs home. I've got strawberries, so I've actually got quite a bit. So
That is, yeah, that is quite a lot. It's really hard to kind of draw those lines though, because I find that especially when, like, if I order seeds or plants online, I kind of it always takes a bit of time for them to arrive. And when I order them, I've got this really kind of strict plan of like, right, that's going to be in that plot at the allotment. This one's going to go in that pot at home, and then by the time they've arrived, I've completely forgotten what I had planned for where. So it's just like, I'll just chuck it in the ground over there, and yeah, just see what happens. And yeah, I change my mind all the time. But it's also about what you've got time to do as well. If I haven't got time to go up to the allotment, I'm just like, I'll just, yeah, chuck it in somewhere in a pot at home and see see if it works.
yeah, so well, this is the first year we've had a greenhouse because our allotment didn't have a greenhouse on it. So we got the greenhouse in March and put it up. I have at least been able to utilize that this year for the first time. Yeah, I mean, agree. It's something that, I was like, I'm really keen to have because last year I just had like a zip up greenhouse on the
Mhm.
balcony,
That's what we've
which was
got.
fine. I ended up buying a second one because I had so much stuff and I was like constantly like shuffling things around, and
Mhm.
yeah, having the greenhouse has helped. But it's like we bought the greenhouse. I asked for it for my birthday, so like my whole family chipped in for it because I was like, I know I could get a free one, but when you've got small children, it's like I cannot spend a day taking down a greenhouse somewhere,
Yeah,
transporting it, and then putting it back up again. I was like, I just don't have the time and resources to be able to take so much time for it. But as well,
I
we
relate to that hard.
yeah, because it's difficult when you've got small children, like uh, time is really precious, and so it's like, for us, I was like, me and my husband would have to go and take it down, which means we have to find childcare for both of them. And while
Yeah.
it'd be lovely, I just felt like this was the better option. So
And I think when you've gone for quite a while without having one, and then not that I know yet, but when you do have one, I can imagine you can really appreciate it, because then it's, yeah, it's yours, and it's so satisfying growing things from seeds, and to be able to do it properly. It's, yeah, hopefully one day one day I can have my own.
yeah, it's like when we got our plot, we didn't even have a shed either. And so we used to like transport all of our tools every time we went. We would take them
Gosh.
in the car. And so like when we got the shed, it was like I did manage to get the shed for free. And when we got the shed, I was like, we don't have to carry our stuff anymore. I mean, my car still seems to be absolutely rammed every time we go, but like I'm not like loading a rake in through the car seats and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh,
just it's what I
we were
love about allotments, it's just like, as they develop, it's really, and I just love how they look so haphazard as well.
I know, that is definitely my favorite thing about allotments. Like, they're just so quirky, and the weirder the better for me. Like,
Yeah.
we've got our one is quite sensible looking compared to some, like, there's another one down the road, and it's a proper like DIY like themed allotment. It's just everything has been upcycled. I just absolutely love it, and it's just so creative. And it's just, yeah, it's funny how they've all got their different personalities. Like that one, they're only like 10-minute walk apart, and they're
Yeah.
completely different approaches, and everyone just kind of falls in line with that. And then we came along to ours, which is, like I say, is quite sensible, and we've painted our painted our shed like pink and yellow, and it's got like loads of those windmill things stuck
Yeah.
around everywhere for Amelia, and yeah, just all sorts of like crazy looking thing, lots of color bunting and everything. So I like to think people appreciate it. We haven't had any of those letters yet, so
Yeah.
hopefully it's managed.
Yeah, we're bunting people. My shed is still just like brown, but I already have plans that this year I'm going to paint it. I might go for like a bluey green or something, so really
Yeah.
like bright, maybe turquoisey. I'm thinking. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
do that.
I often think as well, like having put up a shed and having put up a greenhouse, I'm always so panicked, like when I first do it, like I hope they don't blow away, or you know, I hope it doesn't fall down. Like just something else for me to worry about in my life. But then I like look around at everybody else's like greenhouses and there are some people that have made I don't even know how they stand up, right? I'm like, what am I worried about? Because if the other things don't blow away, then I'm sure mine's not going to.
And the thing is, even if something does blow away, like our water butt managed to fall over last year. I think it was during one of the storms. It fell over, cracked a little bit, so all the water fell out, and then it somehow rolled across like this massive allotment, ended up in someone else's plot, and then they're just like, we've got your water butt, and I was like, oh right, we've got a bit of your greenhouse, and it's not really going to go very far if something does blow away. And
Yeah,
everyone's very friendly, so they'll hopefully
yeah.
give it back.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love, like everybody, especially when you're new, I find as well, people like come round and sort of have a look and are like, who are you then? So,
Yeah, there's like a bit of a nice nosy gardener thing. I think it's like I love being like I love walking around and look at every time I walk past, I'm just like, what's going on here? Oh, they did it that way. Oh, I see. Oh, I like their P supports system they
yeah,
got going on now. I'm going to copy that, and everyone does it. It's kind of like yeah, we all kind of learn from each other in a way.
yeah.
I think that's the best thing about gardening.
Yeah, it's funny like you say that because I walked past my one of my neighbours and I was like, "Oh, he's planted his tomatoes out. It must be time. I'll do mine." So yeah, I planted my tomatoes out this year. I didn't harden them off. I was just like, I literally got them out the greenhouse, planted them in the ground, and I was like, "Good luck, guys. I hope you make it." And they were fine. But yeah, like I get a lot of like stuff I learned about gardening from my granddad, and he's like very traditional gardener, and he's like, you know, you must harden things off, you know, take them out in the morning, and I've like, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for this. If they make it, they make it, and if they don't, they don't.
No, I fibbed to one of my allotment neighbours because she's always there. But she's like the don of our allotment. She's been there a very long time. They've got quite a few plots, and you always listen to what Gloria says. But I walked past her and I was carrying my courgette plants. And she was like, "Oh, I hope you've hardened those off." I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." I'm like, I definitely hadn't. Like, it's like you say, who's got the time? It's just like it's impressive enough. I grew these from seed. Like, what more do
Yeah.
you want from me? Obviously, if they die, then I'll be really gutted. But it seems to be
Yeah.
fine so far. But
I went back the next day to my tomatoes, and I was like, yes,
no,
keep
it's
going,
good.
guys, you made it. But
And the thing is, even if they get a little bit shocked or whatever, like yeah, I'm sure they'll fine. Just but do other things. There's always kind of like a rotation of things you can always try to revive plants, and if they die, it's obviously because they just don't want to. They just don't want to live. So you have to let them get on with
they've had their time,
it.
yeah. Yeah, so like we're obviously like quite similar in our setups because we've obviously got like a small space at home and then our allotments.
Yeah,
We've also got you've got a small child. I've got well, I guess two small children. I've got my son is the same age. He's just turned 2, and then I've got
yeah.
a 4-year-old as well. And something I get asked a lot is like, how do I manage to get anything done with small children? So how do you find allotmenting and just gardening in general with a little one?
Um, it is a challenge, but I try and see it as like an opportunity without sounding too cheesy. I find like, because I think it's only challenging because Amelia, my daughter, wants to get involved in everything.
Yeah.
And I think actually I should be encouraging that. I shouldn't be I don't want her to just have these memories of me being like, get off the beds, or like, oh, touch my seedlings, like that's not very nice. And I've got such nice memories of helping in the garden when I was little. My parents giving me little jobs, like safe job, well, I say safe jobs, but it was like having those massive like scissor things to like cut the edge of grass and stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know how simple that is, but I didn't lose any fingers, so it's fine. But yeah, I think she's interested, which is what I want to happen. It's just more kind of, I'm not so fussed about her like ruining things or whatever, because a lot of the time things can be fixed, but it's probably more of a safety concern of she's just so all over the place. She always goes for the most dangerous things. So I think it's more about she just likes to be kept busy. So it's kind of our job to keep her busy. So as well as thinking about, right, what jobs are we gonna get done at the plot, is like, right, what are we gonna do to keep Amelia busy and give her little jobs to do. So she'll always have like a little task that we set her, even if it's just like a made up thing. She's got her own little tools and everything. She doesn't really understand what's going on, 'cause she's only 2, but she really likes flowers. She likes picking flowers. um, and she's got a lot of enthusiasm, bless her, and she loves chickens. So as well as giving her like little jobs, we kind of tag team it as well. So one of us will be doing something while the other one takes her for a walk around to go and see the chickens or something, and then we kind of swap around to do kind of each other's different jobs and stuff. So yeah, it does require a bit of thought and planning, but it's something that I'm really keen that, like I say, try to be as encouraging as possible and not get too precious about it. And I think there's something to kind of be said for that in general. Like, we can, I think with gardening, can get a bit precious sometimes, because I know there's so much time and care and attention that goes into all of these things. So yeah, you grow this tiny thing from seed and it's taken months, and then it's ready to go out, and then all of a sudden it's getting stomped on by a toddler. It's not not ideal, but at the same time, it doesn't really, like, life goes on. It'll be okay. There are others. It might be okay. So yeah, it's just kind of like trying to take lessons from it, and then hopefully, yeah, as she gets older, she'll kind of understand more, and yeah, we'll just kind of see how it goes. Really, it was definitely easier when she was a baby, and I just strapped her on in a carrier and then just went and like did a bit of hoeing. So like, those were the days.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we got the allotment in 2021, and my daughter was 2, 3, 2. I can't remember. Yeah, 2. She was 2, coming up 3, and then my son was like 4 months. And so, I mean, I'd applied in 2020, and it came up sort of in about 11 months. We were quite lucky, it was
Your
quite quick.
timeline is like the exact same as ours, except that we just had the one child. But yeah, that's quite scary. It's how similar it is.
So she was 2, coming up 3, and he was 4 months, and yeah, it was in the early days, actually, it was a lot easier, I would say. When she was 2 and he was a baby, it seemed easy. He is now 2, and he gets up to far more mischief than she ever did. So one of the first things we did was put like a small fence around, and I was like to all of my neighbours, like, I'm not like staking my land, I just don't want my children running all over your plots, because they'll be gone. Which really helped, because it does keep everybody in. We have like a little DIY gate in the fencing. My daughter never went to it, and if she did go to it, we were always like, don't leave it shut, and she would always just carry on. My son has been out of it so many times, I've had to put a padlock on it now.
Wow.
Because he's just gone, and just chasing him, and you know what their little legs are like. Once they've got a taste of freedom, they're gone. They're like 3 plots over before you know it. And so yeah, having them sort of in an enclosed space definitely has helped. But when you were saying about people stomping on beds, I'm the same. I'm like, you're compacting my soil, and then I'm like, this is supposed to be a nice experience for everybody. And the other day, my son, they've got their own little tools as well, and he was marching around with these little flamingo tools that they've got. And I turned around and he's digging up all my lettuce seeds, and I was like,
Oh, like my babies.
yeah, I was like, oh goodness. And my husband said, is he supposed to be digging in that bed? As he's like digging up like my basil out of like where I planted my tomatoes. And I was like, oh well, I've got others. So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much what I've done this year, is grown more than I probably needed. And I can
Back up.
I can fill in the gaps when something gets pulled out or somebody pulls something out. So
That's a
at the
good idea.
moment they're just digging in one of my beds. I haven't even prepped it because they've dug a big hole in it, and I was like, well, actually I think I'll just leave it. If I leave it, then that can be their hole.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if there's something that takes their attention and keeps them busy, it's just like Amelia was obsessed with, like, it's probably not the best thing, but we had some of those chicken pellets to feed the plants, and she just became obsessed with like helping me to like bring out the chicken pellets and like sprinkle them. But then I just realized she'd just been putting them all in like the same spot, so there was just this mound of chicken pellets, and she was wearing gloves. She had these little gardening gloves on, so I wasn't worried about that part of it. I was just kind of like, and it's because she told me she was trying to feed a snail, and I realized there was this poor, like, I think he'd already passed, but there's this snail that was like underneath this mound of chicken pellets. And I was just a bit like, you know what, it's keeping it busy, it's just leave me to it. So
Yeah, I went today, and I just sort of like was netting around my gooseberry bush, and they were, I don't know, they had like the kneeling pads out, and they were playing some sort of game with the edger tool. And I was thinking, as my daughter carried it from the shed, I did think like, that's a little bit sharp. But I thought, well, I'll just observe what she's going to do with it. I don't know, it was something like a paddle for a boat or something, I don't know, but yeah,
you do a quick risk assessment, like, is it going to
yeah.
be okay? And like, we're going to attempt to build some kind of like mud kitchen or something, or try and kind of create a little play area in the shed or something. So it's something that's like a dedicated space. And I hope that as she's getting a bit older, maybe she can have like her own little little bed or something, if she, like, once she kind of starts to understand the concept of growing. And so I'm very excited for the future. At the moment it's just kind of like, okay, deep breaths, deep through this.
This is the first time as well my son has really sort of paid any attention as well. So yeah, he literally just turned 2. And so last year he was mostly, when we went to the allotment, he was mostly like asleep or on someone's back. And so yeah, this is the first time that he's sort of like waging war on the place. I think it'll be an interesting summer at least.
Yeah, it's Amelia sounds quite similar to your son. She definitely takes more of a destructive, just running around everywhere approach to everything. But you can tell she kind of wants to be gentle with the flowers and everything. She gets really sad if she realizes she's like broken a plant. And yeah, so it's all good lessons, kind of trying to explain to her what's going on and everything. And yeah, it's just great that she's into it, even if it like requires some damage. But yeah, I'm sure hopefully we'll get there. It's entertaining, if anything. So.
Yeah, keeps us on our toes.
Exhausting.
I'm sure all my allotment neighbours just hear me like saying, no, don't touch that, or like, come back, or me saying to my son, don't you leave that gate. But yeah, and they're all there looking for
padlock now after what you said.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all there. All my allotment neighbours are there like, oh, this will be a nice peaceful afternoon at the allotment. And then I show up with my gaggle of children.
Oh, I bet they love it. I hope anyway, my allotment neighbours, they really enjoy having a little person running
Yeah.
around. She's the only child there. And yeah, they like kind of showing her the chickens and everything. It definitely brings a smile to everyone's face. But then
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're breathing a sigh of relief once we've gone home as well.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my neighbors, my daughter is always talking to him, and she'll pick a dandelion and give it to him over the fence, and she's
Oh.
just always asking like, where is he, where is he? But yeah, I think it's just nice, I think, to be able to sort of, share it with them. And my daughter, so I said she's 4, now I'm like, right, do you want to plant with me? And so we're getting into sort of where she's taking even more of like a and sort of active interest. I always find gardening like such a reset, and I always find the allotment a really great place to go when I'm not feeling 100% myself. So, what are your favourite benefits of gardening when you aren't feeling your best?
Well, I'd definitely say I've never regretted spending time gardening or visiting the allotment. And sometimes you're just like, I don't really feel like doing this or going out or whatever. Like, even if I feel like that, I know that as soon as I'm outside or yeah, doing a bit of gardening, I'll be so much better off for it. It is just kind of like, without sounding like super duper hippie-ish, it is just kind of like it's so good for the soul.
Yeah,
And it, even if it's just doing a bit of weeding and just really kind of mindless stuff that like, even if I go up and I'm like, I don't actually know, I don't have a plan for what I'm going to do, I don't know what, yeah, I kind of forget all the list of things that I probably should be doing. I'm just gonna, even just plunging my hands into some soil and just going barefoot, walking around on the grass and everything, I instantly feel better. Like, I'm not saying it cures everything, obviously, but it's just so beneficial. It's been a bit of a lifeline for me this year, definitely. And I just like, I feel like I've just become this preacher person that's just going around telling everyone, it's like, you need to garden, you need to go and do some gardening. Like, I don't care in what form it is. It's just something. It's just so, yeah, it's just so good. And I think everyone can take something from it, because even if you're not into growing vegetables, there's the just enjoying like the flower side of things, and then vice versa. And or even just kind of having a space to just sit and enjoy a bit of peace and quiet. Or there's just so many parts to it. You don't have to be a gardener, and I definitely don't like call myself a gardener, because I have killed many a plant in my time. But it's it's just so therapeutic. And that there's a reason why doctors are now prescribing like spending time gardening as a kind of form of alternate form of medicine and everything. So yeah, it's just, I think if everyone in the world did a bit of gardening, we'd probably all be a bit better off, for it, a bit more chilled out, hopefully.
Yeah, I found the same. So like last year I went through I have health anxiety, and so I went through like quite a rough time with health anxiety, and I always find that just being outside, being at the allotment makes like the world of difference. And I don't know if it's like having that like extra thing to focus on at the allotment, like I don't know, like I'm thinking about seeds, and do I need to pot that on? Where am I going to put that? Do I need to put up a piece of trellis here? And I'm going to need to trim this grass. So many different things that actually it just takes your mind away from like the rest of the world. And it's so quiet, and although not when I'm there with the kids, but in general, it is so
Yeah,
quiet.
obviously, what I'm the version I'm talking about is when I'm there by myself.
Yeah, me
This
too.
is this is different. This is, yeah,
Yeah.
we're in a different space now.
Yeah, so it's it just feels, I don't know, it just feels better. Everything
Yeah.
feels a bit better. I mean, even like last year, like I said, when I was going through like a really bad period of health anxiety, I said to my husband, I'm going to go to the allotment for a couple of hours I just went by myself. And when I came back, this was like June time, there was a few little things that, I'd managed to pick some radishes that had sort of come up, and rhubarb, and I came back with like, look what I've grown, and look at the pictures of what's happening. And he was like, you're like a different person, you're a completely different person that left here. And it's just a few hours getting my hands in the soil, and yeah, I just felt so much better. And I know even this year, like, there's been times where my health anxiety can rear its head sometimes. And I went up not long after we had put up the greenhouse, and I just went up and I pretty much sowed every seed that I had. I was like, right, I'm sowing everything. And it was raining outside. And what's such a benefit of the greenhouse, that like I can go to the allotment when it's absolutely tipping down and still be productive.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just, happy in my greenhouse, sowing seeds. I was listening to a podcast, and it was fantastic. I was the only person there. And yeah, it just feels really nice and really sort of therapeutic, and made myself like a mint tea. And it was just, it was
You're describing like my happy place. It's such a lovely thing, because yeah, even if the weather's not great, and there's still that really cozy element of taking up some coffee and stuff, and just
yeah.
kind of sitting in your greenhouse or sheds while you just hear like, it's just, oh, it's lovely. Like I'm just like, ooh, it's giving me
Yeah.
goosebumps just thinking about it.
It just feels good, and it's actually difficult to explain, like,
Yeah,
what
it's
it is.
it's a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it just makes me feel so much better. Just nice. It's just nice to just potter around.
It's such a good way of spending time when you think like it's so easy to just kind of end up scrolling on Instagram, or watching a bit of telly and everything, and it's just like, actually, like, I think I end up feeling 1,000 times more relaxed doing gardening or being at the allotment than I would doing those other things, because like I say, it just feels so productive. It's really satisfying when, especially if you are able to kind of produce something from it, like growing your own fruit and veg and everything. It's just so kind of like, like you say, like, I did this thing, and you feel really proud of yourself. It's like, even if everything else is kind of falling apart, it's like, actually you're creating these things like out of essentially nothing, and that's something you can kind of control if you're not feeling in control of other things. And I just think that's such a kind of valuable thing to have, and it's so easily accessible for pretty much everyone. Like, if you don't have your own garden, there are community garden spaces, there are garden spaces at like train stations now and everything that you can get involved with. There's so many different things. So yeah, no, I definitely recommend it to everyone. And kind of coming back to what we were talking about earlier, like in the way that I learn, kind of, there are life lessons to be learned from how I'm trying to teach Amelia in the garden, but like how I am, my approach with gardening this year, I've definitely relaxed a lot more because of just our own, like you're saying, you have health anxiety, and it's helped with that. We obviously we've kind of briefly talked about it before, but we went through kind of we've had quite a hard time recently. We had quite a late stage baby loss in my pregnancy, or my second pregnancy, and it's really kind of it was bad, very horrible time, and it wasn't kind of an intentional thing or anything. It's just because of being off of work, I just needed to keep busy, and I needed to find a safe place where I could just kind of be myself, and just feel unjudged, and just kind of myself, and feel like I was doing something good out of a bad situation. And it's almost kind of like, because I think it's just given me this perspective of kind of like, life goes on, and like there's so much that gardening can teach you about, like I say, even if a 2-year-old does come and stomp on your plants and everything, it's even if worst case scenario it doesn't survive, a plant dies, you're still then like, I'm checking it on the compost heap. It's still got a role to play. It's part of this cycle, and
Yeah.
it's all, everything is just kind of going on. And I'm just so kind of like amazed once you stop and pay attention to a lot of things that are actually happening. um you do realize it's just like life and nature, they just, it always finds a way, like no matter what. I can't believe some of the things that kind of have survived like my gardening, and just like the things that, the way they grow, you almost don't, it's like magic. You just don't think, how could something, you've got like these seeds, and you just can't really imagine how they could become anything, and then you literally, you're watching it happening before you. And it's just such a, yeah, like I said, there's just so much to kind of get from that, and for like your own, like in a, yeah, therapeutic way. So it's taught me so much. Like, this is only over the last 2 or 3 months really, but I don't know what I would have been able to do if I hadn't have had gardening and my allotment space, because it has been like my medicine and my therapy and my meditation all in one. And I'm so much better off for it. Like, yeah, like I said, I have no idea. Like, I would definitely be in a darker place without it. So yeah, I definitely urge anyone is in that kind of place, to even just getting outside. It helps so much. And it also, it's become a place where I can go and think about our baby that we lost, and kind of almost feel like I'm spending time with him in a way. And we planted some apple trees kind of in his memory, because I wanted to do something that again symbolized that even with death, they're like, I'm kind of actively doing something that's creating life and will carry on hopefully for years to come and everything. So even though the allotment space isn't ours, that's okay, because I'd like to think that those apple trees will be there long past like we are and everything. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of positive stuff it can kind of give you when you're not feeling very positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And gardening does have, some great mental health benefits. And like you say, going through the loss of your baby, really hard times, but it's gardening can just give you, I don't know, it just gives you, like we said, you have that feeling, and it just kind of brings some peace, even when
Hmm.
you're going through something incredibly difficult. It gives you some peace, and like you say, it's nice that it's a space where you feel like you can spend time with your baby. uh,
Yeah, and I think it gives you hope, because like I say, even if um like I say, everything around you could be going wrong, and then these plant like things are still growing. It all, like I say, life just carries on. It all comes down to that. And I think that's just been something I've really held on to, of just like, yeah, it's even like, you kind of get into all the thing of like, when people die, they're put in the ground, like it's all, we're all part of this, it's all part of the same thing. So there's kind of all these like many deeper levels you could go into and
yeah,
everything, but it's really comforting in a way. I just feel kind of like probably a lot closer to our baby boy than I would be otherwise. And yeah, it's just kind of like, some people might think, oh, but aren't you getting like really sad then if you're doing it in that way? But it's not in that, it doesn't feel like it's in that context. I've kind of been able to like reframe it, like I say, in this positive way of thinking like, yeah, he is still with me, he's with us here. And we're kind of almost like, yeah, all the, any frustrations or anger or sadness that we're experiencing, it's such a good way of working through it, whether that's physically, like literally, like if I'm having a really down day, just like totally going for the weeds or
yes.
something. It's such a healing space on, yeah, so many different levels. So yeah, just, yeah, really fortunate to have it.
Yeah, I know what you mean about there's been times where, I've really enjoyed having a really good like hack at the ground. I mean, my shoulders don't necessarily thank you the next day, but yeah, you can get out some frustration with some of the harder parts of gardening, and then like you say, you're almost like witnessing this like cycle of life and nature.
Mm,
And we do the same thing when something doesn't, if there's a plant that doesn't quite make it, or is flopped over, we like me and my daughter will often, I'm like, we'll take it to the compost heap, let's go and give it back to the earth, right?
yeah.
So it's not a wasted, it's not wasted anything, it's just we're going to give it back to the earth is going to make it into compost for us, and it's going to help next year's seeds grow. And so it is just this big cycle, and like you say, you can get so deep with it because we're part of this cycle of
Mm,
nature and the whole ecosystem that exists within our gardens and our world and stuff. So yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's amazing. Like it is like nature is just, yeah, I think it's only because I've had to stop and like think about things, and it's allowed me to appreciate all of this and like really kind of have an extra level of respect for nature. um and and that's kind of like I try and do that when I am in my garden, or yeah, at the allotment. Like I try and like a, I find it funny when people call themselves organic gardeners. I'm like, what does this mean? I realize it's just the way that most of us garden.
yes.
Is just it's doing it in a non kind of like in an environmentally friendly way. But there's obviously this whole other kind of thing of like, oh, you have to have peat to blah blah blah, like have a good garden, blah blah blah. It's just I've never, like for as long as I've been gardening, I've only been doing the kind of environmentally friendly things, but just kind of not as this like proactive, like I'm going to be such a sustainable gardener.
Yeah.
It's just I've just been doing it and then realizing like, oh, I'm doing it the good way. That's good. But
Yeah.
it's just such a nice thing to think like you're looking after the earth and nature and everything, because there's so much going on that we kind of like makes us insignificant in lots of
Yeah.
ways. Even just like composting, I think it's amazing. I absolutely love composting. I just think it's like I could talk about composting like for days. It's just, I think it's just magical. It's
I know,
like,
I'm never more chuffed than when I'm at the allotment eating an apple, and then I merrily like march along to my compost bin, lift up the lid, pop it in, and I'm like, see you later. And then like look at me being so
I
fantastic.
get you want to go and like kind of tell them like I just composted my apple.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing
Yeah.
my bit. It is very exciting. I get really excited about putting things in the waste bin at home to then take up to the allotment. You can't like go as soon as I've peeled something, I'm just like, quick, get it in the bin. Not that it's, yeah, it's not like a race or anything, but it's just, yeah, for some reason it's just so exciting and satisfying. Like I think last year was the first time that we had the results. We had the actual soil produced from it, from
Yeah.
our first kind of lot of composting, and it's just, you're just like, how does this, again, it's like the seed thing, it's like, how does this come from all of that? It's crazy, but it's, again, it's just like, it's amazing. And yeah, once you kind of stop and pay attention to a lot of these things, it's just kind of, it gives you a whole new perspective on lots of other bits and pieces in life which are actually not that important really.
And I think so, actually, I think some of this came about during lockdown, which is, before I had the allotment. But it, being like at home and not having access to things as easily as, we were used to, and just being sort of more like, I need to use everything up, or I need
Yeah,
to, everything needs to have a purpose. I need to be as sort of self-sustainable in my home as possible, because otherwise I'm going to have to go and fight it out at the supermarket.
yeah, I definitely remember that feeling, and we felt so proud of ourselves. And like you say, just you really felt this need to use everything. Like we're not as good at that now, but even if things are like, yeah, things go off and they go to waste, I'm kind of like now a little bit like, oh, but it's okay, 'cause it's just going in the compost bin. Like, I'm still like pat on the head.
Yeah.
I'm still okay.
Yeah, we're gonna give it back to the earth. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, exactly. I'm feeding the allotment. It's all
Yeah, so it's funny because as I have conversations on this podcast, like so much about like gardening and simple living and slowing down and stuff, so much stems from like the pandemic. And
mm,
it's like that often the conversation always comes back to, well, it was during lockdown when, it was during lockdown when I decided, like, I was pregnant with my son. I was like, I know what would be a good idea to add to this chaos. Let's get an allotment as well.
oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like we're not doing anything else, so why don't we get an allotment? And so, yeah, it's just so I think the pandemic for some people at least, it like really sort of changed the way we think
Mm,
about things and the way we operate and maybe the way that we want to sort of live our lives going forward. I mean, back in lockdowns, I was a lot more like, let me use everything. I'm a bit less like that now. Like the convenience of life was snuck back in.
yeah.
But I love like the whole sort of cycle with the allotment as well of just, like just growing our own food. I love, being like these, it took me the last 10 months to grow these peas and we're going to have one meal out of them, so enjoy them. And
Yeah. They'll be the best peas you ever tasted. So
yeah,
that's for sure.
and I'm always like, we've got like quite a big rhubarb patch, so like, and I don't particularly like rhubarb, if I'm honest. So I'm always like, well, everybody else, I've got rhubarb. Like I always like to my neighbours, like, would you like rhubarb? And she's like, oh, and if you've got some spare. I'm like, oh, you can have it all.
Have I? I think that is one of the really lovely parts of yeah, allotments. It's and yeah, it's just, even if you've got like an abundance of stuff, or yeah, you happen to grow things that you're not really that fussed about eating yourself, it's actually really lovely to have something to gift that's not like kind of, yeah, just a bit of like a random present or whatever. It's actually like, I've grown this, and people really love that kind of thing. They love that you've like grown it yourself, and yeah, even if you're not into your rhubarb, someone else will absolutely love
Yeah,
it. So yeah, and especially on the allotment itself, you've got that community. Everyone's just kind of swapping things with each
yeah.
other. Like, I'm always getting given bits and pieces, and I'm like, oh, what could I give them? And like, it's just, yeah, it's just really really nice.
Yeah, my one of my neighbours last year, he gave me loads of peas and I was like, are you sure? And he's like, I've got so many. And like gave me like some little basil that he grew, and yeah, just amazing. Like people always like giving stuff. When I was new, a lady came over to me and she was like, I'm going to give you these strawberry plants. She was like, because when I joined, somebody gave me strawberry plants. And so now when the next person joins, I'm going to have to give my strawberry plants. It's like, but it's this really nice cycle of like,
Yeah,
everybody's giving like a few strawberry plants to the next person to get started. um
yeah, that's
so
really
it's,
nice.
yeah, and I just think, on the allotment, it's such a nice community of people that, check in on what you're doing. So, and I love just looking around and seeing what everyone else is doing. And I'm always just like, I could do that, or that's interesting. Like I planted
Yeah.
my sweet corn and I did it in like a grid. And I didn't do it in a grid last year. I didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
So just planted it like haphazardly. But then I'd read this year that planting it in a grid formation is really good. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And as I've been walking around the allotment, I've been like, they've done it in a grid too. I must be doing it right. I have arrived at last.
Oh, I'm attempting to grow sweet corn for the first time this year, and I was like, yeah, I plan to do the same thing. Of like, I read that you're supposed to do it in a grid, so I was like, I'm gonna grow also 4 sweet corn seeds for my grid, and only one of them has actually kind of come through, so I'm gonna have to go out and buy another 3 for my grid.
Yeah, I had the same thing last year actually. I bought some sweet corn, and the pack I had last year didn't have many seeds in it, and
Mm.
only like one germinated, I think. And
Yeah.
then I had to buy more, and I only had 3 in the end, and I actually grew them in a line far too far apart. And you have to like tickle the top of their
Yeah.
silks to pollinate. And I tried to do that as much as I was there, but yeah, when it came time to pull it, like they basically didn't have much sweet corn like on the cob.
Right.
But yeah, it
Oh,
was.
it's all trial and error though,
Yeah,
isn't it? That's such a great thing about it all. It's just actually anything I know is either from getting it wrong and failing massively and
yeah,
then learning, or from asking questions of other people and then trying to learn from that. Yeah, I don't think anyone gets it right first time. If they do, that's just pure luck, if
yeah,
anything. And
yeah.
there's all these other things like having good soil and stuff. Like we've got terrible soil, so even that's going to take like years to kind of improve. So it's just like you could just, yeah, you just have to do what you can with what you've got, really.
Something I've been trying to do more this year, I'd say, than I did last year, is a lot more companion planting. I
Hmm.
just planted. I'm always on Google, like, what can I companion plant with sweet corn, or what can I
Yeah.
companion plant with beans? And yeah, so one of my beds, I've got like all sorts in there, all the companions together. For I've got my like runner beans, I've got boleto beans. You can plant that with pak choi, and
Oh,
parsnips and marigolds. And I was telling my granddad, and he was like, that's a lot of things in one bed. And I'm like, well, do you know what? Then maybe there'll be no room for the weeds.
yeah, that is true. That is true.
If it's busy, I mean, I like it to look. I want it to this year. I want it to look more busy than it looked last year.
Yeah.
Last year, I much more adhered to, oh, this has to be like 10 centimeters apart. How big is 10 centimeters? And like
Yeah.
mapping it out. And this year, I'm like, do you know what? They'll survive. And if they don't, they don't. Right?
Yeah, bung it in, yeah, see what happens. And if you've got like, I'm definitely trying to utilize space this year of just like you say, I haven't companion planted before this year. I'm just like, oh, I could squeeze a marigold in there, or actually like, oh, I've got some like a bit of lettuce. I could probably just like chuck that in, just that tiny little strip that's between everything else. And like you say, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it'll keep the weeds at bay, and yeah, it's just about utilizing the space, because that's, yeah, we've all got different size spaces, and yeah, you don't know until you try it, really.
Yeah. And something I read yesterday, I'm always, when I'm at the allotment, I'm never on my phone. If anybody ever sees me on my phone at the allotment, I guarantee you I'm asking what I can companion plant with something. That's all I am ever doing. So I planted some squash, and it said something you can plant with squash is sunflowers. Because
Hmm.
they obviously grow very high, hopefully.
Hmm.
And they also can shade squash a little bit. And I was
Okay.
fantastic. So off I went to my cold frame, yoinked out all of my sunflowers, and yeah, so we'll see. We'll see.
Oh,
Maybe I'll do a podcast episode at the end of growing season and be like, yeah, none of that worked. Don't try it.
well, no, that's a good, like, again, 'cause it all comes down to lessons. Like, I'd love to know. I will be tuning in for that podcast, because it's really like we all start the season of like, there's a lot of hope and kind of like, oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. It's a lot of experimentation, and then you kind of get to the end, and it's that review time, and it's all about, right, what can I do? There's always next year. What can I do next year? And
Yeah.
it is just, yeah, part of the fun is just trying things. And like, one of the companion plants I'm growing is like, because obviously I've like read about nasturtiums and they're supposed to be good, and I bought some, I think they're called blue pepe nasturtium seeds, and they're so pretty. Like, the leaves are coming up and they're all purpley coloured, and
Lovely.
I'm almost just like, I don't care that these are like companion plants, they just look so pretty, and they're just, it's like, it's, everything has a purpose, yeah, but it also, just like you say, you want everything to just look and feel nice as well. Like I want to go in, I want everything to be like going crazy and growing, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that's the vibe I'm going for. It's just like crazy, wild, hopefully productive
Yeah.
plants.
Yeah, and this year I'm just gonna, if I, like you said, if there's space, I'm just gonna try something in it, and
Yeah, bang it in. And
yeah,
garden as well keeps sending me more seeds like every issue. So I'm just like, oh, I wasn't planning on doing that one, but okay, like yeah, I'll
yeah.
chuck some seeds in.
What is a girl to do?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah, I can't help
well,
it.
it's like I hadn't planted my parsnips, and I planted my parsnips a lot earlier last year, and I was like, well, do you know what? You have to use seeds in the year that you get them, so I may as well give it a try.
Exactly. Yeah. And like obviously, yeah, it's a shame if things don't work out, but like that's why trying to grow things from seeds is better, because it's so much cheaper than
Yeah,
obviously buying. Like I used to fork out on, I think before I even thought of like 'cause I thought, oh well, I don't have a greenhouse, so I can't grow anything from seed. So I used to just fork out for loads of plug plants. It's just so expensive, and then you're even more devastated if things don't work out. But actually, yeah, you don't necessarily need a greenhouse. Like I say, I have just one of those small zip up
yeah,
greenhouse things from Wilco, and yeah, that's done me okay. And it just means
yeah,
I don't grow certain things, like I don't attempt chilies or peppers. I'm not really fussed about eating them, so that's one of the things. But yeah, a lot of things, again, they figure it out. I sowed a load of seeds, I think it was like March, because I got a bit excited about, I was like, oh, it's March, you can grow things. But
yeah,
obviously there was a delay with the weather catching up, and nothing was happening for ages. And I thought, well, there's surely like they've all rotted and everything by now. And then everything just, yeah, it was almost just like it was just waiting. And then yeah, it does it in its own time. And if it's not going to germinate, it's because it was probably never going to germinate. So
yeah.
yeah, seeds are the best, I think. And it's just so satisfying when you start seeing everything coming up.
Yeah, when I first put up the greenhouse and had that mass sowing session, I went back a few days later, opened the greenhouse door, and I was like, it's growing. But like you say, like up until this year, I've done it like exclusively in a zip up greenhouse, and it's
Mm,
been perfectly fine. On my balcony space, it's been perfect for, growing up there. And I've always had, really decent amount of like germination and stuff. So it's definitely not like a barrier having a zip up
yeah.
greenhouse. It definitely does the job. I don't have like, I see people sometimes on Instagram in like January and February, like starting their seeds off indoors, and I'm like I don't even
I
have
can't be
windowsills.
bothered. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. It's because we don't. I was going to say, if you don't have an outside space and you're thinking, well, I can't have any kind of greenhouse, let alone a zip-up plastic one. People do obviously do things just using their windowsills and everything. Like that's not an option for us, because we have probably like two windowsills, but because we live in this like quite dark cottage, there's not a lot of natural light coming
Yeah,
into those windowsills. So that's, again, it's not really an option. I did try this year and it didn't really work. So but yeah, there's always different options. Worst case scenario, just give it a go, see what happens.
yeah. And
If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So
yeah, and things like tomatoes. My tomatoes, I started some tomatoes off at home this year, but same, like I have a lot of windows, but I don't have like wide windowsills, so nothing would stand on it.
mm,
Um, but I do have a skylight in my bathroom, so that has the best light, but they still go leggy. They still
yeah.
go leggy. But the good thing about tomatoes is obviously you can like bury the stem. So I don't
Mm.
mind a tomato going a bit leggy, because then I can rectify it a bit later. But it's difficult with, my whole bath at one point last year was just filled with plants, and it's like just simply washing yourself becomes such a chore because you need to get everything out of the bath. So I said to my husband this year, I was like, I'm not going to grow in the bath this year, so you'll be able to sort of like wash at will, not be like have to get 12 tomato plants out the bath first.
Yeah, I grew like all of my tomato seeds last year, and I think I had like 100 tomato plant. I ended up giving a lot of them away as present. I just ended up being this crazy tomato lady that was just like, do you want a tomato? Random stranger on the street, do you want a tomato plant? Yeah, I think you can very easily get over enthusiastic about the seed sowing, but like I say, they have to be used, so why not?
Alex, it's been so wonderful to have you on the podcast today and share with us all your approaches to gardening and how it's helped your mental health as well. So where can listeners connect with you online?
So in Instagram is where I spend probably most of my time online. I like pictures. So yeah, my handle is Alex Penelope Art. And I have also just set up a Substack as well, because I really like the Substack community, so I'm giving it a go for myself. And I'm also trying to set up a little podcast as well, which is about, shocker, gardening. So because I just don't talk about it enough. But I just think, well, I love going around and like quizzing people about their allotments and stuff. So I'm just gonna like record it for a podcast, because I thought maybe other people want to listen to it. So I might come and knocking at your door as well to see if you want to be featured.
Absolutely. You've got it here. I will be there.
Great.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, only follow if you're interested in pictures, illustrations and gardening, because that's what you're gonna get.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a wonderful chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really nice.
That was a wonderful chat with Alex, and just a wonderful chat about gardening, our spaces that we have. And it's so funny because we have very similar setups in terms of, like we both said, we both have small spaces at home and then our allotments as well. And just also finding such peace in, the mental health aspect when we are going through difficult times in our life. And we've both been, as we discussed in this episode, we've both been through different and difficult periods in our lives, as we all do, as we journey through life. And gardening just can really be that sort of escape and safe space, and it just feels good. It just feels really good, deep in our souls. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check out Alex over on her Instagram. I will link everything in the show notes, of course, but be sure to go and check her out. And also don't forget to check me out. You can find me at Life on Plot 44 on Instagram, and you can find me on my website, which is theslowlivingcollective.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you all in the next episode.